I don't really want anyone else seeing them.
Just what you want from those who are closest to you. Everyone telling you you look like crap. It just warms the cockles of your heart,
The
doesn't it?
experience was unbelievable. The golf was even better. But Ben, I'm sorry you weren't there. Well, I'm not sorry at all.
Yeah. She's done me yet again. I thought I had her covered there, and she's absolutely stitched me. It was exactly the type of performance you expect of someone who's won a national championship.
I incredibly admire the man. He's cast a long shadow that I think I'm going to be forever chasing.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Hooked on Sport. What an amazing week it has been in golf. For women's major, one of the most important men's tournaments of the year ahead of us. There's only one person that I would be interested in breaking all of this down with, and that is Sophie Hilditch, who brings all of her expertise and insight. Sophie, good evening. How are you?
Good, thanks, Hooky. How are you going?
I'm really well. We'll get to Ormondy Watch a little bit later. Things have improved for me a little bit. I might talk to you about that at the end of the show. Have you been out on the course? Because it has been miserable the last 3 or 4 days.
I played the worst round of my life on Sunday. I'm so glad you brought it up. And we're going to stop there. We're not going to talk about it because it was woeful. I've come back from overseas, have not picked up a club, and it was incredibly embarrassing. But do you know what? It was okay because I had a glass of wine with the girls at the end of the round and they made me feel better about it. And they told me it's the worst they've ever seen me play. But that's a compliment to me. And I thought, okay, I'll take that and move on. But I had an awesome weekend. My partner was in Melbourne having the time of his life. Meanwhile, I'm sitting on my couch from about 7:30 p.m. I had a beer in my hand, had made myself some scrumptious dinner watching the golf. I was like, this is marvelous. This is the best weekend ever.
There's only one thing better than beer and golf. It's alone beer and golf. I reckon you cannot beat home alone. Don't get it that often these days. I suspect you don't either, but it is just savoured when it is.
Yep, just dead quiet. You're in your own thoughts. I was switching between the Evian and the Scottish Open depending on my mood that I was in, whether or not I wanted that French golf or that spicy Scottish golf, and I loved every moment. I missed him. I'm glad he's back, but the 3 nights that I had was complete bliss.
You had to drop that in. You missed him. I wasn't absolutely convinced until you just fed that back into the show. We're going to get to all of that. Hey, I did notice as well, you had a little couple of holes with your mum at some stage during the week by the looks of things. Bumped into you and mum wandering out of the golf club, but on a Thursday afternoon late?
Yep, on a very late Thursday afternoon. I did work that day, Hooky, so it was a very late Thursday afternoon. Don't try and throw me under the bus.
It was
about
dark. It was pitch dark.
It was about 5:30 p.m. that you saw me, so leave me alone.
Exactly.
But yes, no, I had a couple of holes with mum. She was down there and I'm only about 15 minutes from the golf course and she asked me if I wanted to come out and just play a couple of holes and I thought, okay, why not, twist my arm, and yeah, delightful. But glad to be back. Mum's a gun at golf, just hits the fairway every single time. It's kind of frustrating.
Yeah, no, she's a star. It must be so much fun just having her around with your mum. I reckon that would be something I do miss, having parents who don't play golf. Hey, you said that you had the worst round of all time on Sunday. Why don't we flip it around and you can tell me about who Sophie Star was for the week?
Well, I've gone off golf, even though that's all we're talking about at the moment, but I was kind of inspired by the Evian Championship, actually. I saw Lydia Ko at the end of someone's interview who I'm sure we're about to talk about, but she fell short of making a playoff. She was in tears at the interview. Props to her to actually having that interview immediately after walking off the 18th hole and missing that birdie putt. But seeing Lydia Ko support her, and I mean, she's a competitor. Yes. It's not even a teammate. So my Sophie Star is actually Matt Brumby, who received the Uncle Kevin Coombs Spirit of the Games Award at the Paralympian of the Year Awards. It's followed by Matt's debut at the Winters Paralympics earlier on in this year, and he was recognised for being a supportive teammate and for his resilience throughout the game, not necessarily what he achieved at the Games. I mean, it's an achievement in itself, making the Paralympics, but I just thought it was a bit of a touching thing. And I think sport's not always about, getting those gold medals, but sometimes it's about participating, being out there, showing your resilience, being a good teammate, and just generally being a good person. So I went Matt Brumby because I had some heartstrings pulled today watching the Evian Championship last night.
Yeah, no, two really good ones, Soph. I was, there watching as Lydia Ko comforted. Is it Aki, EY? I don't know if
Yes.
I've pronounced that name. I heard it all last night. I was so worried about trying to pronounce it correctly today. So, yeah, that was really amazing. Well done. I'm not going with the Ben's best this week. I'm going with Ben's worst, Soph, because the worst news of the week emerged this morning. It's been sort of around the place for the last couple of days, but seen vandals on a golf course once again, this time at Wirrina Cove, just down there on the Fleurieu Peninsula. I find this just such an infuriating thing to be constantly dealing with now. We've seen it at, we've seen it a little bit at North Adelaide, haven't we? But we've certainly seen it at Lady Bay, which is just down the road from Wirrina. I just cannot believe there are people out there who feel the need to destroy something for someone else just for their own perverse pleasure. Maybe I'm leaning too far into this, but I do think that there is a bit of an element of some real misguided attitudes towards golf as a sport at the moment. There are significant criticisms around it being, for whatever reason, some elitist sport. And all of the facilities that are being attacked are actually the facilities that are there for the working class and the public and those who don't spend thousands and thousands of dollars on tier one golf. And so I'm quite frustrated that that's the position that the sport has found itself in, simply because the government's decided to do up a public facility. I think they're going to do a very good job of it. We've had discussions on what the ultimate quality is going to be, but the fallout is really unfortunate here, that it just seems that golf is being attacked for being an elitist sport when it is anything but. And certainly the facilities that are being attacked is anything but as well. So I hope we can start to reframe that argument somewhat, because the zone is being flooded by some absolute garbage at the moment with the attitudes towards golf, and that is inordinately frustrating. While we're talking about public facilities, Soph, I do just want to recognise the Mawson Lakes Golf Club that have won the Public Course Division 1 pennant final on Sunday. This was played out at Barossa Valley. They defeated Sandy Creek in Division 1. Sandy Creek won Division 2 and North Adelaide have won Division 3. So this is just for the facilities that there is an algorithm that measured how much public use is, and it's got to be clearly a majority public use. So just want to congratulate Mawson Lakes, not a club that we would sort of look at and say, renowned for pennant success, but this little public course setup I think is just amazing, and congratulations to Mawson Lakes for taking it out, Soph.
I like how we at least finished on a positive after Ben's worst. I was feeling a bit down. I was thinking we're going to have to wrap this podcast up already, because I hate seeing that kind of stuff. I think it's disgusting. A lot of community goes into making courses and a lot of money as well. So it's just devastating to see vandalism at any sort of golf course, whether or not it's public or private, because for some people that's their getaway, that's their sanctuary. We've heard a lot of professionals and amateurs talk about how golf is really good for their mental health, and then to see something destroyed like that, it's just disgusting. So I'm happy we ended up on a positive note with Ben's best.
Yes.
Which was not quite Ben's best. But anyway, should we be moving on to the golf bit?
Yeah, let's move on. The other frustrating thing is this has happened in the middle of winter. They're not going to get grass growth back again in Wirrina until around about October. So that's going to be an ongoing problem just for someone to have 10 minutes of perverse fun. It is a real shame that there are those like that in society. Sophie, the Evian Championship, again, a magnificent finish. Went to a playoff like it did last year where we saw Grace Kim win it. It's Heiran Rue who takes it out. She wins the second consecutive major. Take us through what happened in those riveting last four holes.
Well, I know you want to go to the last four holes straight away, but I've got to go to a Saturday round. She shot 60 and it was course record, but she had no idea in the moment that she was doing it. There's the cutest clip, and I encourage our listeners to go see it, of her looking and being like, no, I had a putt for 59 on the last hole and I left it dead set in the jaws short. And she's just got no idea that was for a 59. I just knew I was having a good round. So that was incredible and really set her up. And I'm not going to lie, Hooky, after her 60, I thought this is going to be an absolute snooze fest. But the Evian, as always, absolutely delivered. I know we're probably going to talk about it being the fifth major and it doesn't belong as a major, but it was an incredible finish in the back nine. That final group with you, Brooke Henderson, and IKEY, is that how we're saying it? I should know this. I was listening to it so often.
I'm trusting your judgment here, Soph.
Well, we'll go there, but I'm going to go straight to the 17th hole because that was absolutely incredible. EY and you parred the hole to then come off the 17th hole with a shared lead. Brooke Henderson has missed the shortest putt on 17. I think it was only about 2 feet and it hasn't even really touched the hole. To have a
It missed
three
by a
putt,
mile.
missed by a mile. To have a 3 putt, put a 1 back coming down 18. EY and you have hit their first drives and they've hooked it into the rough, which has basically forced a layup. Brooke Henderson has hit a perler straight middle of the fairway. They've had to chop out. She's then put a 6-iron basically where Grace Kim was in her playoff moment, to about 6 feet directly behind the pin. There's not much break in that putt. I already knew it. I'm sitting there thinking she could win this if the others two can't make up and down. Rue went first and she happened to, I think it must have been about a 15-footer, box that for birdie. AK missed, unfortunately, and then Henderson held her eagle putt to go down and force a playoff. And it was like a change in events. Then Henderson ended up hooking her drive into the trees and had to have a forced layup. And meanwhile, Rue has just hit this middle of the fairway awesome shot. She kind of flared her second shot to the right-hand side, and then Henderson did the one thing you just can't do and missed the green with a wedge in her hands, and it was kind of game over. She had the chip in to stand a chance of forcing another playoff. Rue actually had a bit of a tester birdie putt. She put her first ball to about 30 feet and then leaked it up to about 4 foot, but dead center. It was no doubt that she was going to win, and it was an absolutely amazing finish. And it's kind of come out of nowhere. I didn't really see her anywhere in the mix until the KPMG.
So it's pretty incredible that this year, 4 majors down, and they've been won by just 2 players. So Nelly Corder goes back-to-back, and now Hayran Yu goes back-to-back.
Yeah, it's uncharted territories for the LPGA. This is the first time that this has ever happened. In fact, I think there's only a handful of people that have ever really managed to do the back-to-back majors. Can't think of them at the top of my head, but I reckon it's maybe Inbee Park in 2015 and maybe Jin Young Ko. Ooh, top of my head, 2019, but that's really testing me. It's pretty...
I love the way you say, I couldn't remember off the top of my head, and then just wheel 2 off the top of your head.
Well, that is at the top of my head. I'm going to get the dates wrong, and I'm just waiting for the DM comments to tell me I'm completely wrong.
You won't get them from me. I just nod my head.
But look, at the top of my head, that's what I'm saying. But I'm kind of shocked because with the women's, and like last year, we had completely different winners for every single major. And some of them, for example, were Grace Kim, and they kind of came out of left field. No one really saw Grace Kim winning the Evian. She wasn't really competing in the majors beforehand. But the majors for the women, the US Open, the KPMG, the Evian, and then the Open all happened within the space of about 2.5 months. So I'm shocked this is the first time this has ever happened because presumably someone could just hit a streak like Rue has, and I mean, how do you stop it? Because she's just got back-to-back tournaments. I mean, This is almost the longest break we're going to have till the Open, which is in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. Take us through the Australians. It looks, certainly from my perspective, a little disappointing.
Yeah, it was a little bit disappointing, but why don't we start with the highlights? I mean, Karis Davidson, T26. She had 66 on moving day. That's Saturday for listeners who don't know what moving day is. It's another incredible major performance. That's 3 majors in a row now that Karis Davidson has been our highest performing player, and it's absolutely incredible. I think our Aussies kind of have to watch out and think to themselves, Davidson's come out of nowhere, but she's come to play. She got that last spot for the US Open, and she's gunning for that position to be a top Australian and a real contender. And I mean, if I even look at the Aussie Open earlier on this year, Karis Davidson wasn't one of the names. You know, we mentioned her, but she wasn't really one of the names that we were thinking she was going to win the Aussie Open.
No.
And then all of a sudden she's come out of nowhere. And coming out of nowhere, we've got to talk about Cassie Porter, who also finished T26. She also had a good third round. She shot 3 under 68. She was incredible, an incredible performance for Cassie, because I know she probably wasn't absolutely thrilled with her missed cut in the KPMG, but that was one of her first majors, if not her first major. So incredible performance for Cassie Porter. But everyone else missed the cut. Hannah Green, Minjee Lee, and our defending champ, Grace Kim, as well as Robin Choi, Kelsey Bennett, and Gabby Ruffles. And unfortunately, I think Gabby Ruffles and bookended it and came dead last, and then Minjee Lee followed, which is very uncharacteristic for her. 2 rounds of 77. But look, I'm not worried about it, Ben. I think our Aussie women are still performing. There's a lot of really big names that didn't make the cut at the Evian. I mean, Nelly Corder, world number 1, didn't make the cut. Celine Boutier, my pick, didn't make the cut. Evian is just a weird course. It's quirky. There's weird bounces. There's pooling areas. There's, you're just slightly off shot, isn't going to get drifted into the right position. Coming out of the rough is so different in compared to coming out of the fairway. So I'm actually not worried about it, but I do have a little bit of a watch on Hannah Green and Minjee Lee for the Open, because this is now 2 miscuts and majors. So it's got me a little bit worried, but not completely worried. I want them to perform at the Open, and I think they still have the capacity to.
Yeah, both of them, were firing bullets at the start of the year, and when the stakes have got highest, that's when they've dropped off, which is a little bit unusual for them. I would contend they're both major champions in the past. So if the Evian has copped a fair bit of bad press, it's a major. It's really a major through money rather than prestige or status. Do you think it deserves to be a major?
Well, it's a hefty argument. You've just pinned the tail on the donkey just there, saying it's the sponsors really. It's the only reason it is a major is because it has a high purse, and that's literally the only reason. But look, I actually prefer it than the Chevron.
So do I.
Don't like watching the Chevron. But with that being said, I'm a golf nut, so I watched all 4 rounds of the Evian and absolutely loved it. But did I really care until the back 9 of the Evian? No. But every single year it absolutely delivers. Those last 5 holes in particular is just an incredible stretch of golf. We always have close contenders, and I do end up really enjoying it and loving it. And it's probably not enough to make me want to call it a major, but I do think when you look at the past winners, we've got Minjee Lee and Celine Boutier. We've had some really big names win the Evian, and a lot of them are ball strikers. And it's shown because, like I said, it's a course that there are a lot of pooling areas, which means you do have to be really accurate off the tee. There are a lot of funnel pins. With that being said, sometimes kind of poorly struck shots can actually end up funneling towards the pin, and that's a bit frustrating, which sometimes means we do get that outlier winner. But generally, the Evian does develop world-class winners, and it's normally those ones that are performing to the best leading up that are the ones that succeed at the Evian.
I reckon I could make an argument right now that it's got more major status than both the Chevron and the KPMG. I reckon both of those tournaments might be behind, in particular, if they're going to play it at courses like Hazeltine, which is just a wet, soggy Hazeltine is just so boring and underwhelming. I found that a really difficult watch, the KPMG. And this was interesting. And you're right, it's thrown up some really good finishes. I might argue the course is it almost gives a bit of a so bad it's good vibe. Because there are some really crazy quirks to it. One thing I would love your opinion on, and it stood out to me, is that we finally get the PGA field playing on an evening rather than the following morning, and a women's major is played up against it. So we have the Scottish Open played kind of in competition with the Evian Championship. They're 2 pretty important tournaments. It just seems like that's a week out. So I understand the schedule's tight, but there was no LPGA golf at all to read about last week. And here they are going up against what's a pretty serious tournament in the men. Would you like to see that schedule rejiggled?
Yeah, I'd like to see it rejiggled. But like you said, it's really tough because they're just coming off the back of 2 majors in a row, basically. And then they're getting asked to play another one, which is why there's that week off. But coming up against the Scottish Open, it's just tough. I mean, I was having to switch between channels constantly, trying to dictate which one I thought was going to be the most interesting. Or for the Scottish Open, often it was like if I knew a player was about to come onto the screen, I'd switch over to them. As it's frustrating because for Australia, these are the best timed events ever. I mean, the Evian finished at about 11:30 last night, which was perfect. It meant I could watch basically the whole final round and the leaders come on through. But then I was still flicking between that and the Scottish Open, which was also an excellent finish in the end, and obviously finishing a little bit later and earlier on into this morning. But I think it's just a shame. I do wish it fell a week earlier because this is my favourite golf. This is my favourite golf season. I love when the PGA and the LPGA head over to Europe and the UK to play. It's where all the creativity comes out. I love this kind of golf. And almost the Evian would get me excited to then go and watch the Scottish Open, to then go and watch the Men's Open, and then to go watch the Women's Open. And it'd be like a fantastic 4-week stretch of golf. But look, it is disappointing. There weren't many spectators out at the Evian, but that's partly to do with the course and the routing of the course. If you actually got to the 18th hole, there was quite a few people watching. So I don't know, it's a bit of a shame, and I think they could work on their scheduling, trying to work it with the PGA a little bit more and be a bit more aware of what they're playing up against.
It should be hard, I don't think. And I know that the PGA Tour notoriously just tries to eat everything in its way, but I reckon there is a capacity to negotiate. There was almost a week off last week. We had the John Deere for the men, no tournament at all for the LPGA. Yeah, I know that they really cram all of their majors in together, but there's a week there where you should be playing one of these events and not the other. Let's turn our attention to the Genesis Scottish Open, which is played once again at Renaissance Club. Very, very golf-friendly part of the world over there, that section of Scotland. It was won by Tom Kim, the Korean, who has had quite the resurgence in his game in the last couple of months after really having 2 years in the absolute wilderness. He wins by 2 from Australia's own Min Woo Lee. Soph, you were the one who sat up late with your beer and your TV dinner. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting, wasn't it? I was really rooting for Min Woo Lee. Part of me really wanted him to win, only because of all the criticism you've been throwing his way for the past 12 months and thinking he can't get a win. And unfortunately, he kind of did prove that to you, unfortunately.
He's
but
won this before, Soph. He has won this before 2 years ago. Yeah.
He has, and he played exceptional golf.
My criticism has always been around majors.
Yeah, it's majors.
And that stands. Yeah.
But this is in the lead up to it, and I think it's also a course where he's not necessarily putting out driver the whole time because it's firm and fast, which means he has to show a bit more restraint, which Min Woo Lee isn't really known for doing. So I was thoroughly impressed, but Tom Kim was absolutely exceptional in that final round. I don't know why. Tom Kim just grinds my gears, the way that he fist pumps at everything. But then I've got to remind myself that whilst Tom Kim's been around for a while, he's still only 24.
Exactly, yeah.
And I have to think about the boys that I knew and they were 24. And I've got to think, yeah, okay, this is probably completely normal behavior. And it was very emotional when you saw him crying and you saw how much it meant to him. But I don't know, something about a Tom Kim win, it just didn't quite do it for me.
Throws more punches than Muhammad Ali. What about some of the Aussies? What do you take from them? Cam Davis, Carl Phillips, Adam Scott.
Yeah, Cam Davis, 67 to finish T21. It's not a name that we've really been mentioning. He's kind of come out of nowhere. So an excellent round for Cam Davis. Carl Phillips, T30, another good showing. And Adam Scott coming into his 101st major, which is just an incredible achievement with a T66. Obviously, not the best that we want to see from Adam Scott, but he's obviously getting a little bit older and competing against all these absolute guns is going to get harder and harder. But it's good to see that he's still competing and still in that field. And still, to be fair, he's not someone that I'd ever rule out to not have a win, because he's keeping in excellent shape and he's continuing to improve on his game.
So this week heralds the playing of the Open Championship. It'll be at Royal Birkdale. It has a great history, this course. It was basically the first ever course built to what you would call championship specifications. And we're going back something like 97 years ago now when this course was first built. It's delivered some incredible winners. Arnold Palmer won this tournament in 1961 and really led the charge of Americans coming back to the Open Championship and trying to win this tournament. Peter Thompson, who has won the Open Championship 5 times, has won here at Royal Birkdale. Ian Baker Finch famously won here in 1991. He shot 64-66 on the weekend. I was actually driving home tonight, so and heard him reliving that round on Triple M with James Brayshaw and Billy Brownless. So you can imagine how those two guys were dealing with an interview like that. Lee Trevino's won there, Johnny Miller's won there, Tom Watson's won there, and famously Jordan Spieth won there the last time it was played 9 years ago in 2017. The reason why it's such a popular major venue, there's a couple of reasons, Soph. One is that this is played in and amongst these incredible sand dunes, so it's great spectator access. It's a pretty easy road in and a pretty easy road out. There's reasonable parking for what you can expect for some of the major rotor courses. The other thing is the players absolutely love this place, and do you know why? because it's kind of dead bang straightforward. So even though it's in and amongst these amazing dunes, there's no undulations in the fairways. The greens are all pretty flat and benign. And we know, if we know one thing about professional golfers, they tend to like it pretty easy and straightforward. A lot of elevated tee, so you get a good look at the hole off the tee rather than, tee at grade, which you certainly see at a place like St Andrews and a lot of those sorts of places. So because it's been such a great tournament for spectators, or a great venues for spectators, and you've got players that love it, it's hosted 11 Open Championships, 2 Ryder Cups, 6 Women's Opens, 5 Amateur Championships, a Senior Open, a Walker Cup and a Curtis Cup. So this is a course where professional golfers and golf fans love to come to. Soph, the players are past 70 this year, 7,200 yards, had a pretty major redesign in 2021. So a lot of what we saw last time they were there when Jordan Spieth won in 2017, it's going to look quite a bit different. I won't bore you with all the details of the changes in the holes, but just tell us a bit about what you're expecting to see at Royal Birkdale this week.
Well, with the heat wave, I'm expecting firm and fast. There's not going to be as much greenery as we saw back in 2017. I'm expecting that browned out grass a little bit more. I was actually watching McNeely on social media bouncing a golf ball in the fairway. It looked like a bouncy ball. It bounced
Yes, a
about
rubber
like
ball.
15 meters up in the air. It was incredible. So the players are going to have to be quite creative with that firm and fast texture, because they're going to have to get used to landing short of greens, which is just unheard of on the PGA Tour. It's not something that they're used to doing. They're going to have to get a little bit more creative on, it's just not the pin number. What's my landing number? How much do I think that's going to run out? We're expecting some wind, which, like you said, this course is pretty straightforward. So it really needs the wind for it to actually show its teeth and be a bit more peppery and a bit more fiery. But Ben, I've been watching that 2017 replay of Jordan Spieth, which is one of my favourite Open wins. It's just incredible. I'm pretty sure it's the one where he tells his caddy, Grella, to pick up the ball from the hole.
Yeah, well, the 13th was where he made the world's longest bogey. So it took 29 minutes to play that hole. He hit it 100 miles right. In the end, he decided to take a penalty drop. He was in waist-high rough, took a penalty drop out onto the practice fairway. It's probably marginal if he was really on the line of play. Then he managed to get a drop further right because he had television trucks in the line of his play from there. Eventually hit this wood sort of short right of the green, chipped it over a bunker, and then made the putt for a 5. 2 holes later was the first of the 2 par 5s. The first par 5 is the 15th. That's changed now with the course redesign. But back then in 2017, first par 5 was the 15th. So Spieth, who I think might have been a couple of strokes behind after he'd made that bogey on 13, suddenly eagles 15. And yes, that was the point where he pointed to Grella to go and pick up the ball out of his hole. Out of the hole for him, and moved on. Ended up winning that by 2 or 3 strokes. Matt Kuchar played the back 9 in 2 under and lost by 3, having stood at the stage score with the bloke who played. He was all over the course, Jordan Spieth, that entire 18 holes, and how he conjured a win from there, I don't think we'll ever know. We'll never see anything like that again.
I don't think Matt Kuchar even knows. I think my favourite part of watching him play that 13th hole was when the TV cameras kept forwarding in onto Matt Kuchar sitting on the ground in the middle of the fairway, probably thinking he's got the Open right in the palm of his hands, wondering what the hell this kid is doing because he can't even see him. There's just rules officials everywhere, spectators getting moved. And he sat there for about 20-ish minutes just waiting to hit his ball. And then all of a sudden this kid just makes a bogey. But look, it's going to be that back 9 in particular, like you've just touched on, is going to be completely different to what we saw in 2017.
Go on.
What I'm most looking forward to is that 15th. It's a new hole, that par 3, that's 240 metres. It's going to be the longest par 3, and it's looking completely so difficult, falling off on the back where you don't want to be, a narrow entrance to the green. And look, I've just been reading news articles. I obviously haven't been and seen it myself, but looks like it's a really small green, and Birkdale does have small greens, but it's actually the biggest green on the property. So that deception is going to play a massive factor, and it's going to be quite scary having a club that's going 240 yards and you're thinking, I don't want to go over the back and I don't want to go on either side of this green.
7 Australians in the field, Soph. What do you make of them all?
Look, I'm a little bit worried about our Australian men, and you know I've been worried, but obviously Minwoo Lee's coming off a great win from the Scottish Open, and he's shown that he does like links courses. I mean, his chipping at the Scottish Open was exceptional. Even that chip on the 18th hole when he went over the back, he was trying to make it because he needed to make it with Tom Kim, so he's gone a little bit long. was exceptional. Enough spin, low to the ground. It was everything that I love to see on a links course, not just lofting it up in the air and getting that backspin and stopping it quickly, but actually using the undulations of the green. Cam Smith is making a return. Jason Day, Adam Scott, Lucas Herbert, Cameron John, and Travis Smythe. But the thing that I'm just struggling to see is trying to pick a winner out of these Aussie boys. No one is particularly jumping out at me, which means I'm going to have to go with my heart and my soul. And I've been looking at that 2022 Open win from Cameron Smith at St Andrews, the 150th Open, and the way he navigated the road hole with that bunker, choosing and electing the greenside back bunker to putt around it and then drain a 15-footer. I mean, I'm desperate to see that creativity from Cam Smith once again, and that incredible short game. And we haven't really seen it. We kind of saw inklings of it at the Australian Open, but the Aussie Open, Royal Melbourne, played softer than what we used to because of all of that rain. And I'm just hoping to see some of that creativity. So, you know what? I'm going Cam Smith as my top pick for Australia, but I'm just hoping and praying to God that I'm not going to be absolutely devastated at the end of this.
For those who are listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you would have missed out. But anyone watching us on YouTube and watching your facial expressions, the way you had your face and your head in your hands there as you were explaining what happened on the road hole with Cam Smith. And that was just so creative to sort of whip it around the edge of that bunker and use the slope into it, nearly putted into it. Well, that was obviously the risk. It was just genius stuff. And that's why they're professionals. And you're a good amateur and I'm an absolute hack amateur. So if it's they're able to conjure up those sorts of things and then pull them off is that's what makes them the stars that they are. So if I'm going to be fascinated to watch Jon Rahm again this week. Of course, we know that he's been on the LIV Tour for the last couple of years now. The one great challenge for LIV players is that they've had terrible run-ins in the lead up to majors. And so Jon Rahm has finally had a really good lead-in to a major. This is his 15th major that he'll now play without a win. So for someone of his quality, that is quite the drought, if you like. And we know that Rory McIlroy went, best part of 40 majors without a win. But for someone like Jon Rahm, that's become quite the drought now. So yes, he didn't have an absolutely spectacular Scottish Open. In particular, his first round was a bit poor, but the whole point of these tournaments is to get yourself ready for the major the following week. So I just reckon there's no excuses for him this time. Can he deal with the constant pressure and the constant grind of playing a course under major conditions? That will be the test for him, because we've had this discussion many a time. So if that certainly hasn't been thrown up on LIV courses throughout the year, they've all been 25, 26, 27 under. They've been pillow fights, soft, poofy type golf, which I don't think sets up the best players in the world to be able to handle major challenges. So that will be a watch for me. The other guy I want to keep an eye on is Tommy Fleetwood. He's the hometown boy. He's grown up in that region. His golf game has been off a little bit, I would say, the last 6 to 12 months. He is probably still regarded as the guy in the field who's the best player in the world without a major. I do think he gets an opportunity here. He's been top 15 in each of the last 5 tournaments he's played. So I feel like his best is coming back to him. I don't know if he does have the mentality to win a major, because he'll always throw in a poor round when it matters. And then he can often, end up with a top 3, top 5. But he's kind of backdoored his way in with a big round on Sunday when he's already sort of pushed himself out of the tournament. But my word, wouldn't it be an absolute fairy tale if he could get it done at a place like Royal Birkdale? He's going to have the locals on his side, and he'll be certainly one that I'll be watching throughout the week. So to wrap us up, who's your tip and who's your roughie?
My tip is Matt Fitzpatrick. I cannot go past him. I was pretty devastated with his finish in Scottish Open. It wasn't his best stuff, but his game throughout the whole of the PGA season so far is absolutely incredible. He's appearing basically at every single event and almost having a top 10 to be guaranteed. So I'm going Matt Fitzpatrick. He's an English boy. He's not the homeboy like Tommy Fleetwood. I agree with you. I would have loved to have picked Tommy. I actually disagree. I think he will get a major one day, but I think playing in front of your home crowd is one of the most difficult things to do. We saw Rory do it at Royal Portrush. It's not an easy task. Everyone is rooting for you. There's going to be so much media on him. You're not just adding, he hasn't won a major, but you're now adding, this is your hometown. You should know this course like the back of your hand. Albeit he probably doesn't go back there that frequently anymore because he's playing on the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour pretty consistently, but it just adds a whole nother level of stress and anxiety and attention. And I think it's probably not the major that I see him winning. So I'm going to go Nats Fitzpatrick.
And a roughie?
Random. And I don't know why he's come to my mind, but I'm going Tyrrell Hatton from Liv. I think this really suits him. He's playing pretty solid golf at the moment. He can strike an iron. The only thing I'm a little bit worried about is that head, because it tends to absolutely go up in flames whenever he hits a slightly poor shot. I almost went Rory McIlroy after his pulled shot when he yelled out at the cameras at the Scottish Open, "God, I'm bad at golf." And I thought,
Yes.
mate, you did not see my Sunday round, because that's bad at golf. That is nowhere near bad at golf. But no, my roughie is Tyrrell Hatton. How about you, Hooky? Have you got a tip for us?
I'm going to go with Chris Goddard. Arena's going to continue to ride the wave that he's been on. Won 5 times in the last 2 years, including 4 in the last 12 months. Was fantastic at the Open Championship at Royal Portrush last year. Won the Scottish last year. I just like him around a place like this. He does have some creativity. He can handle his ball flight. It's not going to get windy, but I think he can handle his ball flight with regard to the fact the ball is going to release out quite a bit. So he's a guy that I think here at a price is someone that I would be happy to tip to win. And then my roughie, I think, is Patrick Reed, another guy who he started the year in an absolute blaze of glory. He's dropped off from what was a speed that was going to be impossible to keep up. But iron play is going to be so critical around here. He's a master with the short game. Put a wedge in his hands and he's going to be a real threat if his putter gets hot. I think he's going to run past a few guys that you perhaps wouldn't expect him to run past, Soph. So there you go. We'll compare notes this time next week. Goddard up and Reed for me, Fitzpatrick and Hatton for you. Hey, let's come a little bit closer to home, even though she's further away. Just give us the latest on your good mate, Reagan Denton.
Yeah, Reagan Watt, she's been playing an event. She's playing the Women's Western Amateur, which was an absolute strong field. She made it all the way to the top 16. I can't remember what they called them, but it had a cool name on social media. It wasn't the Sweet 16.
Wasn't Sweet 16?
It was the Sweet 16?
They use that a lot. It's a basketball term, comes from the March Madness college basketball tournament where they play in brackets, and if you can get into the final 16, they call that the Sweet 16.
Cool fact. All I could think was Sweet 16 had never been kissed. That's a better fact for me about the basketball.
I'm sure they're all related, but yeah, that's it. In fact, the big dance that we've often used about for grand finals in any sport, that originated from this same March Madness nationwide college basketball tournament. And it was just a coach who said, yeah, it's always good to finally make it into the big dance. And that's been taken to pretty much every other sport, much to my inordinate frustration.
Hooky on my Monday night. Well, anyway, she made the Sweet 16 and unfortunately got knocked out on the 18th hole. But I got to give a shout out to actually the Aussie youth, Grace Lee, who got all the way to the final of the match play and got knocked out on the 16th hole, but an absolute incredible performance. Reagan, hoping to see her at the US Amateur, which is coming up soon.
Yeah, 2 weeks' time, so 3 weeks' time, so that's the first week in August. So yeah, she's already exempt into that along with Ellis Gaisbrook. So looking forward to see her perform there. Now we are coming really close to home, Soph. In fact, we are on our home courses, and we've done 2 weeks ago the best first holes in South Australia. Last week we did the best second holes in South Australia. Now it is time to focus in on the best third holes in South Australia. I was pretty confident I knew where you're going to go with at least one of them, so I decided to give that one a wide berth. But if you had to put up a Mt Rushmore of the 4 greatest third holes in South Australia, where do you go, Soph?
Royal Adelaide. Absolutely, straight off the bat.
Fancy that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I've already picked 2 Royal Adelaide holes, which is incredibly embarrassing, and I'm going to have to move off them pretty quick. But how can you not pick the iconic third hole at Royal Adelaide? So much risk reward, that short par 4, that narrow green. You can hit driver and you can try and hit the green, and I have seen some brave people do it, but you can completely lose your ball and not see it at all because it's a blind tee shot. Or you can just comfortably lay it up and have about 100-metre pitch wedge in and have a shot at your birdie. But look, an absolute incredible hole. It's iconic. It's not actually my favourite hole at Royal Adelaide, but it's pretty hard to move past it. After that, I'm going to Barossa Valley.
Oh,
I absolutely love this downhill par 3. It's pretty difficult. I think off the red tees, it's playing about 150 metres. I actually really love a third hole par 3. I think it's an excellent timing within someone's range just to throw out a little bit more of a tricky kind of shot. You can easily make a bogey on a par 3. So actually, when I was picking my top par 3s, I was really looking at Kionga as well as Glenelg because I love those par 3s. But Barossa Valley for me. And then going Blackwood, another par 3. See, I told you, I love the third of
This
par
is a good
3.
par 3. I don't know Barossa Valley. I can't remember it. I've played there. I can't recall that one, but I can certainly recall Blackwood third, and it's a cracker.
Yeah, Blackwood is an absolute cracker. It's about 140 metres, 130 metres off those red tees with that just sneaky bunker on the left-hand side, which my ball always loves to go into, but also just the pines lining it just makes it look like such a tight tee shot, particularly after you've just played that dogleg right par 5 as a second, and that second approach shot, just so much can go wrong with it, and then all of a sudden you're faced with the same corridors. I just absolutely love it. I think it's really well placed within the Blackwood routing. And then finally, I'm finishing off with Mount Compass. Now, this one was a bit risky. I think it's going to be completely controversial, but they've actually moved the tee block to make it a straighter hole. And since moving that tee block, I think it's an exceptional hole where, again, you've got a bit of risk reward. Everything around the green kind of tends to want to funnel into the water onto the right. So if you do take driver, you have to be eerily careful to not hang too far to the centre, to the right of that fairway. But you can just simply take an iron and have a longer iron into that green and kind of cop that. And the green is just super interesting. Not that very wide, but not that long, very narrow. And it's got all those different undulations. It's just a very difficult green to hit with some very creative pin placements that they can get. They can take you over the water, or they've even got that funnel pin out left, which I particularly like because you can kind of hit like a scummy shot and still be okay.
Can't argue with any of those, Soph. I did flirt with Mount Compass myself. Love Blackwood. As I said, I don't know Barossa Valley, and Royal Adelaide. The third there, absolutely iconic. One of the great short par 4s in the world, not just in South Australia or Australia. So if I went the third at Grange West, I think that's a really clever hole where you have that waste area that you can try and bite off a little bit of it if you can hit it okay, and you can try and bite off a lot of it if you're a really good log player. But the risk reward is absolutely 101 for architecture. I think it's a really well laid out hole. Of course, the closer that you can get to that waste area, the better the approach you get in. So it's just absolutely really intelligent, good golf course design that I really enjoy. So yeah, if you decide to play safe and go out to the left, then you've got a really difficult approach in with a green that slopes away from you, that bunker over on the left-hand side. Really clever hole. Tea Tree Gully third. Now, this used to be a par 5, so if I don't know how long it's been since you've been out to Tea Tree Gully, this used to actually be a par 5. And they had trouble with balls going out over the western fence, neighbours in play and all of those sorts of things. So rather than try and make it a bit of a dinky par 4, they decided to make it a long par 3. And yes, it is a long par 3. And I'm not a super fan of long par 3s per se, but I reckon they've done a wonderful job of this. It's a 3-tier green. It's expansive and there's plenty of room to try and land the ball, but it's not over once you get on the green, Soph, because if you're on the wrong tier, man, have you got some putting ahead of you, because not only is it just straight up the tier, there's some breaks within the tier as well. So I put Tea Tree Gully in as one of my 3. The third at McCracken I've added, so we've got a little bit of a regional hole here. I don't know if you can recall the third at McCracken. It's a really clever little hole. There's water all the way down the right on the tee shot. There's bunkers over on the left. It's only 350 metres off the back, so you expect it's finicky, that you have to be very, very accurate off the tee. You're going to have a wedge in your hands when you play your approach. There's a big bunker on the right. There's a little bit of a bailout on the left, but if you bail out too far, there's water over on the left as well. So a hole that I really enjoy playing anyway, Soph. I just love the strategy of it. It reminds me a little bit of the 10th at Royal Adelaide, where you can't overdrive it because you run out of room, and then you've got to be absolutely perfectly accurate with your approach as well because of the way that green on the 10th at Royal Adelaide slopes off. And then I've actually decided to finish off with a hole that's actually closed at the moment, and that's the third at North Adelaide. And I just think we talk about the great tee shot, the first at Victor Harbour, and that was probably one that we should have, well, I certainly should have maybe given more some consideration to, although we weren't really playing Mt Rushmore back then when we're talking about first holes. But this is truly an iconic hole in South Australia, the way It's so elevated, and you've got the city in front of you that's just so perfectly framed by the tree line either side of that third hole. I think it's going to become, what did I decide? Might be the 10th hole, I think, Soph, when the new championship course is unveiled. But for now, it's still the third for me, and I think that's been one of the really most enjoyable places to tee a ball up for. And, you know, as we know, it's only $40 to play there. It's pretty spectacular. So that's my Mt Rushmore.
Great picks, Hooky. I actually like all of those.
You know what we're going to wrap it up with? A little game of Who Am I? So the rule here is, Soph, I've got a hole somewhere in Adelaide in my mind. Well, South Australia, but I have already narrowed this down. This is somewhere in Adelaide. I'm going to give you little clues. I'm going to start fairly obtuse, and we'll sharpen it up as we go along. We'll see how many of my 10 clues it takes for you to successfully work out what golf hole this is. So here we go. Who am I? I am a par 5 playing 489 metres from what they determine is their men's tee block, and 471 metres, so a long way back, for their women's tee block. Still just pondering there, hand on chin. Thought you might have wanted to have a guess. You don't lose a point if you guess and you guess wrong, Soph. I am index 11 for the men and index 5 for the women. My tee shot is framed by a large bunker on the left of the fairway, and there is more trouble again further left.
It's not
on
the
the
second
last
at Royal, is it?
See, this I threw that clue in just to see
You
if that
did,
might
you
send you
cheeky.
towards the
With the
second at
train
Royal.
tracks.
It is not the second at Royal. I'm the last par 5 on the course. My green has 3 bunkers of note, one short, a smaller one front left, and a bigger one middle right. One of its interesting features is that I have a paved pathway that crosses over me. I reckon you're going to start to hone in on it here. Water comes into play twice on this hole, to the right off the tee and left of green on approach.
It's the 18th at Glenelg.
It's the 18th at Glenelg. I finish in front of my elevated clubhouse. I'm on the 18th hole, and yes, I am the 18th at Glenelg. Well done, Soph. Got there in the end.
I don't know about that. You lost me because I started thinking about Royal, and it's really hard to then have to go back and start thinking about the clues again.
Yes. Well, I was writing these clues thinking I might just say something about more trouble further left of that bunker, and I reckon that's going to just hook her into a little bit of send you off to Royal Adelaide. And sure enough, I was exactly right. Hey, there's been a bit of chatter about our mate Peter Ormandy and his chase for 14. He stumbled of the last few days, Soph. So remember last week we talked about him. He'd had 43 points. His handicap had come into some astronomically low number. Well, Pete's been playing pretty much every day over the last week. So where were we? Last week he was, what's the date today? It's the 13th. So when we last spoke, he played on Monday and had 43 points. The following day he had 39 points. His handicap was down to 14.1. Now he's got to play off 14. He's subsequently gone 19 points, 27 points, 21 points, 34 points, 26 points. And so there's a little bit of wiggle room once again. He's out to 14.7 GA, I think. So we're getting back close to 16. So Peter Ormandy and the pursuit for 14 has just hit a little bit of a hurdle in the last few days. But I tell you what he does have now. He has about 7 or 8 free hits. So you know the way that works with flag games. I don't think he's got any flag games for about the next 4 or 5 rounds. So he's still in there with a chance, Soph.
Well, that's the best position to be in. 3 whole rounds. Anything could happen.
Yeah, absolutely it could. So we'll keep everyone updated of that. So, bit of an epic today, but there was so much to talk about. Always appreciate all of your insight, in particular around the Evian and certainly with the preview on the Open Championship. Now, just a reminder, I do owe you plenty of beer because not only did Victor Hovland of Norway do exceptionally well in that tournament a couple of weeks ago. Was that the John Deere that he won?
It was,
the one
yeah.
Before that it was the John Deere, wasn't it? So won the John Deere, and then of course your new favourite football team went all the way to the quarterfinals of the World Cup, better than any of the teams I could have selected. So I've been Googling Norwegian beers. I've got half a dozen for you sitting here in my fridge at home. I'll send them around to you in the coming days. Always a good chat, mate. Good stuff. And we will see you next Monday when we break down the Open Championship.
Can't wait. Thanks, Hooky. Have a good week.
See you, Soph.